Welcome to CSM Talk, the CSM podcast that focuses on two fundamental aspects of customer success: value to the customer and value to your organization. Today on Rule 40 Success, I'll be asking my guest to focus on a particular area of the Rule 40: new logo acquisition, upsell and expansion, churn or profitability, and give their point of view on how they would partner with customer success to drive aspects of the Rule of 40 and how this delivers customer value. Okay, got it? Good. Let's CSM talk. Okay, welcome to this week's CSM talk, and it's my absolute pleasure to have with me Chad Horenfeldt. Welcome, Chad.
Thanks so much, Kevin. So happy to be here, chat with you guys this morning.
I'm going to let Chad introduce himself and give a bit of background to his expertise. But also, Chad, I want you to answer the one question which we get everybody as a guest on here to answer, which is sum up customer success in one word. Not 3 words, 10 words, 0 words, but 1 word. So,
all right.
Okay.
I had to use 1 word. I would say trust. I usually equate customer success with value and trust, but I think trust is much more important.
Fantastic. And if you'd just like to give us a bit of background to yourself, that'd be great as well.
Sure. So I'm a customer success leader who has been in SaaS and customer success for about 18 years, which is somewhat surprising, but I jumped in very early and I've had a lot of successes. I've been with companies that are very low in terms of ARR up to about 100 million, and been with the CS Leader with Eloqua that went to about 100 million when public was purchased, and then my last company was with a customer with a K that was eventually purchased by Meta. And in terms of my kind of overall headline, I'd like to describe myself as someone that brings stability to chaos, and just love helping companies in terms of strategy and just helping growing customer success in general. So really happy to be here, Kevin, and chat about customer success and all sorts of other topics.
Excellent. So what's also really cool about this is you're actually our first customer success leader we've had on this. So I've been
that's awesome.
I've been talking to different.
Very privileged about that. Thank you. A lot of pressure.
I wanted to talk to a lot of people outside of customer success about how they would partner with us, really. So it's good to have this this opinion of the customer success leader and how they look outwards and want to partner with other teams. So with this being the Rule of 40, so for those who have not tuned in before, the Rule of 40 is that overguiding principle which says if your growth in ARR, so that would be from new acquisition logo, from upsell and expansion, and also from churn, you take that off, minus or added to your profitability comes to 40% or more, then that is a healthy business, SaaS business to look at. So within the Rule of 40, what aspect do you want to concentrate on for this podcast?
Yeah, I think retention would be the one I'd want to talk about. I think it's a very hot topic these days.
Fantastic. So cool. So maybe you want to start with, in terms of seeing at a macro level, what seem to be the problems you're seeing in terms of retention.
Yeah, I think that one of the lucky parts of this kind of economy that we're in is that I get to speak to a lot of CEOs, a lot of CROs, and the overwhelming challenge that I'm hearing is, yeah, we know net dollar retention rate's down. We know new acquisitions down. But one of the things that's really, I'd say, causing a lot of heartache within companies is surprise churn. And it's companies that, and these aren't just little companies that are churning. These are like enterprise companies, sizable ARR, that are churning out that wasn't expected. And it's just causing a bigger problem because companies are then questioning, well, what is customer success doing? I mean, we thought that they're the ones that are supposed to be protecting our revenue. And here, we're seeing forecasting that isn't accurate. And I'd say that overall, my sentiment is that customer success is under attack.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Let's circle those wagons then. So in terms of, you said you were talking to a lot of CROs at the moment. In terms of dealing with retention, is sales really the most important relationship you have, or are there any other people, teams you partner with? If we look at the big issue you were talking of surprise churn,
Yes.
big customers with surprise churn, what are those kind of what healthy partnerships would we have in CS with the rest of the company that could mitigate against surprise churn?
Yeah, I think that it really, there's like all relationships. It's marketing, it's sales, it's product, it's finance. I'd say that you're right though. Like the ones that are the most important are product and sales. I think that with product, you really want to make sure that your your products that you're selling, your products that you're supporting, are in line with what your competitors have. And in terms of pricing as well, you need to make sure that those are aligned as well. But I'd also say that having all of the information that you need, having all the resources that you need, that's another one where the finance team is really important too. But most importantly, it's product and sales, because with sales, you need to make sure that you're aligned with sales in terms of the roles and responsibilities. And then with the product, it's just really making sure that the right feedback is going to product, and it can't be a lot of noise, right? We can't hear from like one customer that's going to churn because of a certain item. It really needs to be focused. It needs to be certain themes. And the other thing is that it can't just be, well, this competitor is coming in and taking our customers. You have to go down another level. You have to really understand, well, why are your customers leaving to that particular competitor? Is it a price issue? Is it a product gap issue? And so again, it's going down another lever. I think that many customer success teams grew a fair amount in the end of 2020 and 2021. And then when it came to 2022 and now into this, this year that we're in, just companies weren't prepared for it. They were kind of running, I'd say, old playbooks. They were looking at usage data. They were focusing on meeting with the customer, and it's just not going to cut it. And then that's really why we're seeing, I'd say, more churn, but more unexpected churn, and a lot of problems. And this isn't just a customer success problem, right? This is a company problem, but it's really falling on the shoulders of customer success right now.
Okay. So let's look specifically at the term you've used, surprise churn. What are the things you think you could put in place, or a company should put in place, to make sure that there are no surprises? And I'm thinking in terms of ongoing processes, ongoing programs, or whatever you want to call them. How do you take that surprise element out so there are no surprises? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be surprises of some sort. So we can't, but what we can do is we can try to mitigate them. And what I'll talk about is, I'll talk about more on the enterprise customer side, and I'll talk a little bit on the the SMB side later. But on the enterprise side specifically, I think where it starts is focusing on the business outcomes that your customers are trying to achieve. So going back to something I mentioned, where a lot of teams, they're doing QBRs, or they're meeting with customers on a regular basis, and these are all positive things. But in a lot of ways, customer success, they're not necessarily customer success strategists. They're customer success helpers. So they're helping customers use the product better. They're helping customers answer questions. They're even helping customers with support or onboarding. And these things are fine. Like, these are things that we need to do. Somebody needs to do these things. But the challenge is that if you're spending your time on those items, you're not necessarily having the right types of conversations that you'll understand. Not only is it like how your customer wants to use the product, but what value do they want to get out of your product, so that when they need to justify the budget, they'll be able to do that. So the first thing is really defining what those business outcomes are. So a business outcome, it's some sort of value point. It could be increasing revenue, it could be saving costs, it could be improving customer experience, it could be improving employee experiences. There's many different aspects of what those business outcomes are, and they will be dependent on your particular product. The second thing is defining what are those success criteria or success metrics that will indicate that the customer has achieved that business outcome. So if it's increasing revenue, you'll increase revenue by X% in Y amount of time. So you really want to have that specific time frame, or you'll increase your conversion rate by X amount in Y amount of time. So you really want to quantify that. And then the third part is, what are those goals that the customer needs to achieve so that you can get to that business outcome you're trying to achieve, so you can achieve that success metric. So that's kind of where you get into more the tactical playbook, sort of things like, in our case, a customer with a K, we're a support platform. So a success criteria would be, decrease the average handle time of what we're support conversations, which are support tickets. To achieve that, we're going to implement automated routing. And so the first thing is working with your customer success team to define what those business outcomes are, create a business outcome playbook, and then have a process where you're going to create and document when you have those conversations with the clients in a success plan. So here's the business outcomes, here's the success metrics, here's how we're going to achieve that, and then track that progress over time. So it's critical. And that, as I'm saying it, there's a lot of work that's involved there. But the other thing is you have to train your team too. You have to train them on how to ask the right types of questions. You have to train them to make sure that they're having those conversations, since you're tracking that, you're creating goals around that. And then you need to make sure that they know how to conduct those types of conversations. Because if your CS team is just used to handling feature requests that come in and bugs and projects and things, like it's going to have a difficult time to have those types of conversations. So that's really the starting point. And then it kind of cascades from there in terms of other things that you want to focus on.
So that's really interesting. And you're talking very much to the success plan, value realization, even going towards like ROI delivered, so which is purely about customer success delivering value to the customer. How do you, so I'm the CRO and I go, Chad, that sounds great,
Yep.
but that's not, to me, that's nice, but I've got a number. So how do you link that value realization program to what is value to customer with a K, the CRO there?
Yeah, so really good question. And I think here's kind of where the challenge is, and sort of this, you hear account plan, you hear success plan, you hear business outcomes, you're like, how do I kind of pull this all together? So the success plan is a joint success plan. It should be something that doesn't get buried in some sort of Google Doc that no one ever sees again. And if you can, you're working with your client, maybe use a tool that they use. Now, you need something that you're working jointly with your sales team, and whoever owns retention, whoever owns the upsell, cross-sell expansion component, doesn't matter. You still need to have an account plan. And the difference is the account plan is internal. And the account plan is not going to only include their outcomes, it's going to include who the key stakeholders are, what's the relationship you have with those key stakeholders. And that's why you can't put that in you can put that in your success plan, but you don't want to like rate the relationship you have with your key stakeholders in some sort of joint document, them strong, medium, or weak in terms of the relationship you have with those particular contacts. And when you have a really good account plan, it talks about the challenges, talks about outcomes, talks about what your plan is. It also talks about what the opportunities are, with that particular white space. Maybe there's other divisions you can get into. And then you can also equate what that potential revenue potential is. That will really, really help in terms of communicating, to the CRO. And in those top accounts, so talking about our enterprise accounts, then you want to summarize that up in a forecast, and you can say, here are the accounts that we're going to grow, here are the accounts that are going to stay the same, here are the accounts that might contract, and here are the ones that are going to churn. And that way you can clearly communicate, to the CRO, here's what we're expecting from the customer base, from these particular accounts. I don't think you can get an accurate forecast. If you got a long tail, you got a lot of smaller clients, I don't think that's feasible. I think that you might need to use like, adoption metrics and things like that as, some sort of, equivalent. But the typical revenue for those, isn't worth as much, obviously depending on your business model. But, going back to that surprise churn, when you lose some of these accounts that are in the hundreds of thousands of ARR dollars, like that's when it really, really hurts. And, CS leaders, CSMs, they really need to be on more on top of that. And I think the big thing for CS leaders is I just outlined like some heavy tasks. And the question is that what's on the plate of the CSM so that they're actually able to do those particular things and have those particular conversations.
Very good. Yeah, completely. How feasible is the program you're trying to roll out? So I really like the idea of joint CS and AE account planning.
Yes.
It's something that worked very well, previously that I've done it. What would you say to but those always felt like they were one-off exercises. So they were kind of like, we do them at the beginning of the year because sales operations will beat us up if we don't do it. Big bad Kevin won't give me a CSM if I don't do it. So Chad will say, no, you're not getting a CSM if we don't do this. So that they all get done. How do you keep the momentum going of saying, right, we want to periodically revisit these accounts to look at where they are from a CS perspective and what potential impact that might have from an internal commercial perspective? What tips do you have on keeping that momentum going?
Yeah, I think that there needs to be regular cadence meetings between sales and CS, especially now, just because when revenue is even harder to get. I think having a monthly cadence meeting makes sense, and obviously individual reps and CSMs may be meeting much more often. But having a more of a high level review and kind of going through that forecast, I think it makes sense on a monthly basis to find what that opportunity is, and I think poking holes. And that's what I think I really like about account plans is that you can poke holes and you can say, okay, that business outcome, that success metric, that's fluff. Like, you're saying they're going to increase, conversion or something, but you don't really have a tight percentage, or, you've identified key contacts, but those don't seem like the right key contacts. They're, let's say, at the director level, they're not at the VP level. And I just took a look in CRM, doesn't seem like you contacted this person, in 3 months. So yeah, I think, having like that regular cadence can really drive. And it's just like how sales operates, right? Sales has pipeline meetings, and you hear the sales leader just grilling the rep. It's like, come on, like you've had this at stage like X, and you really think it's going to close this month? It's not going to close this month. Like, stop having that those things in your pipeline that just don't make any sense.
I think you're absolutely right. There has to be like a regular cadence that CSMs get used to it and AEs get used to it. They're saying, right, we're going to review Q+1, Q+2 renewals. We're going to run through them, and whoever is commercially responsible for forecasting that renewal, if it's like if it's Disney and it's a 500K renewal, right? Either the AE's forecasting it or the CSM is, whatever. But we have like on a regular basis reviewing that forecast, that opportunity, which is reviewing the account plan, and then what the commercial impact of that on what you're forecasting in Salesforce or whatever it is, right? What do you do in terms of health? So CS health is a topic, people do. Is that in any way factored into the ongoing discussions with the sales team on what the opportunity looks like?
I mean, definitely. You're talking about like the health score or something like that, or
yeah.
Okay, because I was also thinking it's like the health of CS as a whole, like definitely health, mental health, and I know it's very, very tough right now. But anyway, I know we're talking about health score. So with health score, this is where you need to work with RevOps. We haven't really talked about RevOps or CS Ops, and even re-looking at how you have evaluated clients and how you put up that, created that health score. I think it's a really good time because, you're finding, customers are churning, and you really want to, re-engineer or reverse engineer what happened. Why did they churn? What are those things that you could have done differently at different stages of the customer life cycle? So it's really important, the health score, but it has to be working, in the right way. And again, if it's not, then a lot of teams will just ignore it. And I also do think, going back to this idea of outcomes, the largest clients, like you need to be factoring that in. You need to ensure that you've defined it, that customers are doing the right things that are on the path to achieve those outcomes, and somehow, again, factoring that in. And it's hard. Like these aren't easy things, and some companies are able to equate some usage metrics to those outcomes, but you just have to be really careful because again, you don't want to go back to the scenario where you've got a green health score and then customers churning. Logging in is like, a basic metric. And, even if you have lots of scenarios that I've talked to many different CS leaders, people are logging in and they'll just churn. Like, it's like, yeah, we were using your platform up until we were just, working on another platform to transfer everything over. So now that's done. Yeah, we're done with your platform. So, yeah.
So you mentioned something about customer health, like, it's a green and then all of a sudden people churn, that's not a good indicator. Where do you stand on CSM health, customer health being just, a single red, yellow, or green, or it being an aggregate over different factors? So I know some people before just go, give your assessment on whether it's red, yellow, or green. But some people, and it's something I've done before, where we have specific different categories, which we rate red, yellow, or green. So political, relationship, implementation, partner if needed, product, technical, usage, commercially, and what I would add is value as well, the ROI plan type thing. So when you look at over all of those, they cover all the bases you need. So you're not pinning yourself to going, well, it's not as simple as red, yellow, or green. There's all these different things. And looking at them differently might help you put a more solid plan around how you might take something which is from a renewal at risk to a renewal that's being safe.
Yeah, I think having different categories is really helpful. Like, you want to understand where the problem is, and then you can have a playbook that can help you address what that particular challenge is. But at the end of the day, like, kind of going back up at the top, your CEO and at the C-level and your CFO, they don't care. They want to know, like, is this going to renew or not? Is this going to grow revenue or not? And, as a CS leader, like, you have to be able to summarize and communicate what the status is, what that ultimate status is. So I think having it broken down is very effective, because you can then triangulate where you should focus. And so, for example, let's say that the challenge is that, either a sentiment or a relationship challenge, your main point of contact left. So your playbook could be, all right, well, let's get some help from sales, because sales tends to have better skill set at developing new relationships. And that would be a play that I would look to run. And then again, that's how you can kind of work with other teams. Or if there's a product gap, this is where, I'm going to look to involve product and look to see if what the product gap is kind of fits within where our roadmap is going, and look to address that. And that's all great. But again, at the end of the day, like, at this point, so here's how I'd say why I'm saying CS is under attack. We're seeing entire customer success teams being disbanded right now. We're seeing mass reduction in customer success teams, like CSMs, just being laid off. And we're also seeing customer success being pushed underneath revenue teams, sales teams in particular. And again, I don't have necessarily data points on these, but I've talked to a number of companies, and I'm seeing this as a consistent trend. I think the other thing is that, we were seeing more commercial responsibilities fall under CS. So either customer success managers owning renewals, upsells, either having a renewals manager. And I'm just seeing reorgs happening, and CROs telling me, hey, this is what I'm thinking right now. I'm thinking of moving this, under sales. I've got capacity over here. So this is a big problem. And this is where I really feel that CS is under attack, and really need to change the way that we're thinking and up level how we approach things, or this trend will continue. Now, we all know that this is really like the wrong approach. It's a very reactive approach, and you've seen it yourself, where you have companies that are like remove CS, and then the next year they're like, oh yeah, we saved all this cost, and it looks like renewals are doing better now. And then in the interim, and then long term, it's like, all right, our NPS is like in the toilet, and our retention rates have like completely plummeted because we've removed that key element that's bridging everything together. But we're in a really tough time right now. So companies are looking for answers, and again, like, there has to be a further focus on getting that renewal forecast in a better place, but also really asking tough questions from our customers so we have a better sense of, are we on that right track, so that they're, when it comes to renewal time, they're going to talk with their CFO because, all these products are being consolidated or removed. Are they going to keep your product? Are they going to look to continue and continue that partnership with you?
Interesting. Now, with this trend of not CS just becoming a bit more commercial, but actually being fully commercial under a CRO, and having real sales responsibilities and sales accountabilities, do where do you perceive there being challenges in?
So I'll just stop you because I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm actually saying that they're taking those commercial responsibilities and they're giving them to sales. So they're creating, like, instead of having a customer success manager, it's an account manager that has a quota, and kind of removing what CSMs were doing, which was meeting with that client regularly, having those business reviews, and doing the right things to help the customer. But the challenge is that you can help the customer, which is great because you're helping your primary contact, you're helping them solve problems. But it comes down to, are you actually achieving value? And that's what the challenge, that it's not necessarily clear that the CS teams are doing that. And B, it's not necessarily clear what the impact the CS teams are having and how that's communicated to the executive team. So I'd say a gross failure at times on CS leadership. And it's hard, right? Because CS, as I mentioned, grew exponentially in the last few years, and you had a lot of new people coming into these roles and not necessarily trained, or even thinking like, hey, this is something I have to handle. I'm trying to handle everything else that's being thrown at me. We're growing really quickly, and I'm hiring and doing all these other things. So yeah, it's more of just taking that commercial responsibility and giving it into the hands of sales, and almost like removing some of the aspects that CSMs were doing altogether. So that's really what I'm seeing. That's the bigger trend.
Okay. So does that then in some way free up the CS customer success team to solely concentrate on value realization? You've got that segregation of duty, which is, look, I'm only, as far as you're concerned, CS team, you just go deliver value. You'll have somebody, beside you, your buddy will take care of anything commercial. Does that kind of create a freedom in some sense?
It does, but there's two things. One is that they've cut the number of people, right? You only have a limited amount of budget, right? So budget has to come from somewhere. So it's like, all right, well, let's cut that budget. And so let's cut the CSMs. I'd say the second thing is that it's really lowering the impact of customer success as a whole. So the other thing I'm seeing is, by putting CS under the chief revenue officer, which again, that's not the biggest problem, but they're also lowering in terms of the stature of customer success as a whole, and that means the salaries as well, right? And kind of the impact that it can have. So this is, and again, anyone can challenge me on this, but I'm doing a lot of my own primary research on this and seeing this, and it's definitely a big challenge and something that we really have to start to fight on, and try and make sure that this doesn't continue in this direction, because everyone listening here knows that the impact of customer success it can have. It's just a matter of doing the right things and then communicating the impact that you're having, and that is both in terms of the end result, which is the lagging metrics, the retention growth, but also on the leading side, like showing that you're actually driving adoption in key areas of the product that are going to lead to growth, that are going to lead to retention, showing that you're building the right type of relationships, showing the activities that you're doing, and even providing things like customer stories. And I think the last thing is, how can you concentrate on customer-led growth where you're equating new business opportunities to existing customers. So some type of way of tracking referrals, also doing things like customer success qualified leads. So these are all the different things that you can do as CS leaders to show the value of your team.
just to summarize, I think we've got through a lot, and it's been really, really useful, useful insights from you. What would be your if you were looking to, as a CS leader or a CSM indeed, show value internally to your rest of your team? What are those top 3 things that should be top of mind?
I think that as a starting point, let's remove business outcomes, remove success planning. The first thing that I'd start to do would be to share more of the stories. I know that we're really busy. We're in meetings and back-to-back meetings, responding to clients, but look for ways to take the nuggets from your calls, from any discussions that you have, and start to share those with your customers, or sorry, with internally. So a great question I love to ask is, beyond focusing on their company and what value they may have achieved, just ask a question like, what do you love most about our product? Usually it's the opposite. It's like, all right, what problems do you have? What challenges? What do you want to discuss? But that would be the first thing. I'd say the second thing is that when you get a sense of what is value to them, what are their outcomes, what are their objectives, and you're quantifying that, personalize the information that you're sending to the client that is grounded around that. So as an example, let's say you have a product release. Don't just say, hey, we released these 3 products. Say, hey, we released these 3 products. Here's how it's going to help you based on our previous discussion. If you have questions, I'm happy to help you through this, or direct you here. I think the third thing that I'd recommend, the last thing I'd recommend, is going to your other teams, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, and just or product, and just say, hey, like, how can I help? What more can I do? And I think that if you focus on those areas just as a starting point now, I think that you'll drive a lot more value. And the last thing is this. I mentioned this in terms of evaluating the relationships that you have with your customers, both your primary like day-to-day contact, your decision maker / executive. Don't assume that whatever you communicate to your day-to-day contact is getting to that decision maker. So when I talked about personalizing the information back to your contacts, make sure that you're selling that value back to the right stakeholders. So don't expect them to show up on a business review. They're busy and they're doing other things. And it doesn't have to be a business review. Like, if you've seen the customer achieve some sort of really interesting area that's value driven, then write a specific email that's 2 lines and say, you did X. This is improvement of Y from the last time that we may have chatted. Your contact is doing great, so give them a shout out too. That your day-to-day contact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. Very good. This has been really, really, really interesting, because there's obviously lots going on, and customer success is in a period of change, like lots of things. So it's been really, really useful to have sort of, especially your experience and your insight on this. So Chad, thank you very much for being on CSM Talk.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kevin. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Bye now.